You know, I would love to know who were the idiots that were employed by Google to rectify, if you like, the Google Translate of the YouTube home pages or accounts pages, because this account on which you are watching this video was set up by, I believe, Ernst van den Berg in Afrikaans. Fair enough. And I work in English, so I translate the page back to English. And some of the translations are that bad that there's no ways they could have been done by a machine. I'll give you one example. This is kind of not translation, but this illustrates the point immaculately. Possessive apostrophes are used for plurals. Now, there's no way that Google's translate machine was taught that in correct English you use possessive apostrophes for plurals. One shoe, two shoes, no apostrophe. One video, two videos, no apostrophe. One haircut, two haircuts, no apostrophe. One nose, two noses, no apostrophe. But when my nose possesses something, as my nose possesses freckles, my nose's freckles, apostrophe. The freckles of my nose's freckles, apostrophe. And my point is just, this is more germane than you might think, that even in the most vital tasks, let's face it, everybody watches YouTube, everybody's on YouTube, everybody has a YouTube account. So it's a fairly important thing to do well. They said, we'll opt for the mamparas. We'll go for the dummies to do our Afrikaans back to English translation. I don't know how the Afrikaans translation is. It doesn't, in other words, it's obviously YouTube is set up in English. So when they have French, German, Italian, whatever translations, they're translating from English to that. And then if you set up your page in one of those languages, French, as Ernst set this up in Afrikaans, now I want to use it in English, no problem, I just press a button, it's an easy thing. It's translating. So there are two translations that I'm encountering, or that were played into my end experience. I don't know. Who am I to say that the Afrikaans is not that good? I don't think it's brilliant. But the translation back is just unbelievably bad. Loading. Loading. It's loading. Lie. Lie. Ek laai my bakkie. Ek laai my foon. Ek laai my honde in die kattebak. What do they call loading, these idiots? Charging. Loading the video, charging the video. Because phone charges, so everything. I'd love to know, but I strongly suspect that they did not get the best and the brightest from Affies or Waterkloof or Stellenbosch, or I have a very strong feeling. Perhaps I shouldn't say it. Hey, yeah, yeah, it's sad. It's sad, but there's hope, guys. There's hope. I'm telling you that there's hope. And I can demonstrate it to you. I'm speaking now to, well, we used Afrikaners as the good example. The talented Afrikaners that were not employed. The brilliant. I always say to people, it's changed a lot now. It has changed a lot in recent years. Not 30 recent years, or 25, 20, 15, 10, like 5, 7, 9. You're getting a hang of a lot of young Indians doing especially well in the national performance rivalry or competition or whatever at school, you know. Top 10 maths, top 10 distinctions, top 10 100% for biology, this kind of stuff. But I always used to tell people, until recently, the way that Afrikaners dominated that thing. I'm from Natal, with best schools. Hilton, Michael House, Kersney, Thomas More, and I haven't gotten started. I haven't mentioned Maritzburg College. I haven't mentioned the good Peter Maritzburg girls' schools, or the two outstanding Durban girls' schools. There's no question that Natal had a disproportionate representation in that field. But, and of course, the good English-speaking Johannesburg schools, Transvaal schools, St. John's, and the list is endless. But the best talent, in my opinion, like the exceptional, the unicorn talent, or as Malcolm Gladwell puts it, the outlier talent, always seemed to be a young Afrikaans girl with blonde hair and blue eyes. I mean, every time I looked, it's not something I really follow, but every couple of years I'd, some boring article on who got the big flip if it wasn't. And I'm coming to a real point here. Excuse me. I've spent a lot of time traveling in Africa, a lot. Not in recent years, but there was about a 20-year period that I went to university for 2 years, I hated it, dropped out, went to the army for a year, worked for a year, and then I hitchhiked to Ethiopia. I actually hitchhiked to Zanzibar. I worked there for whatever it was, six months-ish. Fell very, very ill. Came home, recuperated for about 2 months, and hitchhiked back there again. Then I went on to Ethiopia, then back down, and so it went on. Subsequently, completely subsequent to that, I've worked, traveled to Nigeria for work, I think 23 times, to Kenya about 10, and so the list goes on. Excuse me while I pause and take a swig of water. I'd forgotten to put the glass on my desk, and I've got another table that I use, and I plonked it there, and I didn't want to lean across like a contortionist in the camera. And in all of those travels, that great familiarity that I have with Africa, I learned that there are isolated pockets of non-indigenous or non-native communities that excel. When all is said and done, every shockingly bad society that wants to employ an Afrikaans speaker who has no technical bevoegdheid with the language, still needs somebody very, very, very clever to provide a service that is flawless. And we haven't yet really seen it happen in South Africa. To some degree, yes, but black economic empowerment has countered this. So you may say, Simon, but what about the brilliant Afrikaans-speaking, English-speaking people who run banks? Yes, but they have been surrounded by people who were put there not because they were brilliant, but because they were passable and black. But when push comes to shove, you have to have the very best providing some services, such as, for instance, medical services. I felt terribly ill in Nigeria once, and I had to go and see a doctor, and I wasn't looking forward to it. Lo and behold, I was referred to an exceptionally good Lebanese doctor. And I didn't even ask him because I knew the Lebanese community in Nigeria, because there was only one hotel worth the name 20 years ago, and that was the Echo Hotel, EKO. And that was owned by Lebanese. Obviously, the president got a cut and this and that, the next thing, but fundamentally it was a Lebanese hotel. Because at the end of the day, regardless of your sister, your cousin, this one, that one, nepotism, you had to have at least one excellent hotel in Nigeria to receive presidents and whatever, whoever else. At some point, it can't be about, is our Afrikaans translator also empowered? Don't worry so much about her understanding of a plural. Of a plural. A plural. We're not talking about declension we're talking about plurals. This is not the language equivalent of mathematics. This is the language equivalent of arithmetic. They don't understand plurals. One ship, many ships. One man, many men. One finger, many fingers. Don't understand in language terms. You don't need an apostrophe. But when it comes to negotiating a oil drilling contract, for instance, with Shell, you have to have the best. You have to have the very, very, very best. And it's not your sister. And slowly but surely, outside of farming and other spheres, I think that the residual or the remnant white community, notwithstanding the events that are transpiring now, that are emerging in the world, that are going to change everything, change our lives. As Umsina van Rensburg said, after the struggle, I don't remember the exact words, so don't quote me to the magistrate, as it were. Simon said, gospel truth, exactly this. But he said something roughly along these lines. After our struggle, we live like our grootjies. In other words, great-grandparents. And I often, this is now a big digression, I often wonder precisely what that means, because a generation is 25 years. So do we go back, let's say our struggle ends in, who knows, 2025, 2030. And we go back one generation to 2005, 1980, 1955, 1930. Is that how we're going to live? Once everything is wrecked? Once the great events for which South Africa is destined have totally wreaked the havoc, mayhem, and destruction that they shall? Or he who was Sina van Rensburg, who was speaking in the early 1900s, would that take us back to his Grootjies time? In other words, 1830, long before the pneumatic tire, rubber processing technology, welding, when things were put together with screws, nails, or rivets. Klar, there were no seamless joints. There was no such thing as soldering. There was no such thing as electricity in a commonly available form. I don't know, but I think it's a very interesting thought. And I am preparing as if we go back to 1830, but there's a reason why I believe that we might go back to the times of, in terms of technology and progress and science and knowledge and what have you, the times of the late 1700s. I'm not going to give you the reasons why, but I've given this a considerable amount of thought, and it is my private suspicion that prophecy should be read and understood in a very, very, very particular way. You can figure it out for yourself. I don't want to really get into that conversation now. But back to the original thing, talking about how shabby things are in this country, how shabbily done they are, how poorly done they are, and how the very best are excluded from the best opportunities. The opportunities that they should be taking or being given for the advantage of everybody, because they will uplift the society. If you have the best people coming out of Waterkloof or office or whatever, getting an equal opportunity, they will take our society forward well for everybody. You only have to think of electricity. There were 15,000 employees at Eskom 30 years ago, generating 44,000 megawatts of electricity. There are now 40,000. I stumbled over my words the other day. I panicked a bit and I decided to err on the side of caution, knowing that I was blimming wrong. But it was just in a moment of panic while being interviewed live, and I said 30,000. It's 40,000. Now, 30 years ago, of those 15,000, doubtless 10,000 were white. Now you have 40,000, and at least half the whites have left. So effectively, 10,000, and we know that we're struggling to generate 22, 23, 25, 20,000 megawatts of electricity. So effectively, 10,000 whites and 5,000 blacks could produce double what 35,000 blacks and 5,000 whites can produce. And we've spoken about this before. I've told you about the bell curve. I've told you about there are 4 times the number of blacks of average IQ in South Africa. 4 times the number of whites there are blacks. 4 times the number of blacks than there are of whites with the average IQ. So don't please let any silly fool tell you that I'm saying something racist. It's much more subtle than that, and nobody had to force me to say it. I said it when it offended people. Nobody wanted to hear that. The fact remains, and all I say is that that day will come when the best and the brightest of South Africa find the niches in which the society permits only the most excellent people to participate. As you have the best doctor in Lagos is a Lebanese, and the hotel in West Africa is Lebanese. And there are many examples. There's Nakuru mattresses in Nakumat. If you've ever been there, that's what it stands for. Nakumat, that you see on every street, that comes from Nakuru mattresses. in Kenya, and they're the Omanis in the Zanzibar Islands, and in eastern Tanzania. It's not so much of a thing in Kenya. In Uganda, it's the Indians return there. Yeah, I mean, there are countless examples where societies recognize that at the end of the day, even if YouTube simply doesn't care whether its service is good, so much as that it cares that the person who delivers the service is inherently good and right, namely not white. There will be other places like brain surgery and heart surgery, and the president and the cabinet of South Africa's own banking services, and so on. Yeah, guys, thank you very much for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I wish you nothing but the very, very best. May the hand of God rest over you and yours in these perplexing and troubled times. Amen. Bye-bye, everybody.